Welcome back everyone, and thank you so much for the lovely feedback on my previous Elden Ring bedtime story. I really enjoyed making that one. So let's do another, this time focusing on the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree. If you haven't listened to the last one, just a friendly reminder, these videos aren't meant to be the most accurate source of lore. I do add embellishments and fill in the gaps, so if you'd prefer a more objective deep dive, I'd recommend checking out my playlist called Elden Ring Lore. Like before, I won't be running any pre-roll, mid-roll or post-roll ads during this video, so it is safe for sleep, relaxation and immersion. But to keep producing videos without monetization, I do like to take on a sponsor to help out, so before we begin, this message is sponsored by Raycon. Right now it's Raycon's anniversary and they're offering a fantastic 30% off their essential open earbuds. These are sleek, smart and far cooler than your average pair. Whether I'm writing, traveling or winding down for the day, they fit seamlessly into my routine and make everything sound better. Raycon's essential open earbuds deliver crystal clear sound, but because they rest just outside your ear canal, you can stay aware of what's happening around you. Whether it's traffic, co-workers, you can listen to a YouTube video and stay alert without sacrificing audio quality. And Raycon delivers the same premium experience as the big brands at half the price. They even come with a 30-day happiness guarantee. They're lightweight yet secure, and I found that even when I'm moving around a lot, they stay perfectly in place. Comfortable, breathable, and built for all-day wear. I struggled for the longest time with earbuds feeling incompatible with my ears, and if that sounds like you, then great. I use these and I definitely recommend them as they have this multi-angular hook that rotates to give you a personalized fit, whatever the activity. They also have multi-point connectivity so you can link them to multiple devices and switch between them effortlessly. And maybe my favorite thing is the battery life. The earbuds themselves last up to 8 hours and the case holds an extra 36-hour charge, which is ideal for me since I'm someone who always forgets to charge things. So when I'm done listening, I just pop them in the case and then they're all ready for next time. So if you're considering buying, ordering Raycons does help support the channel. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/chaliceopen to get 30% off the essential open earbuds. That's buyraycon.com/chaliceopen. Thanks Raycon, and now let me tell you a story. Long ago, there existed a land the world was meant to forget. A forbidden place, cut from the lands between, sealed beneath the roots of the Erdtree, lost within its shadow. This land bore a canopy not of gold, but of coal, a tree that drank the darkness cast by its greater sibling, a pale imitation known as the Shadow Tree. It covered a realm once bright with potential, where the first and primal form of life mingled together. Tree, beast, and man, one with the crucible. That truth still lingers in the veins of its people. The Hornsent, born of antler and flesh, kin to beasts, guardians of what the God Queen buried long ago. Their world burned, for that queen bound her son in chains of duty. Messmer, red of flame, led a crusade to cleanse the land of all his mother deemed impure. The Hornsent fell, their city destroyed, their gods impaled upon stakes of fire. They were to be erased forever. At the peak of their bloody work, Marika the betrayer turned away from her own son and hid the land beneath veils of silence. Thus the realm of shadow vanished, and with it every trace of her sin, until the day Miquella, child of Marika, saint of compassion and purest of all Empyreans, turned his gaze towards that forgotten land. He had once strived to create a haven before, the Halig tree watered by his own blood, where the unwanted might dwell in peace. But even there rot crept up its branches, his beloved sister lay dying in its boughs. So Miquella sought purer soil. He divested himself of every worldly burden, his body, his arms, his heart, his eye, his doubts, his fears, his love. Through the realm of shadow he travelled, intent on reaching the one place where he might transcend all suffering and create an age without cruelty. His footsteps were traced by followers loyal to his teachings. The Needle Knight Leda was the spearhead of Miquella's followers, a woman of iron poise and quiet fervour. Once a knight of the Halig Tree, sworn to Miquella's mercy, she had heard his voice, not with her ears, but within her soul, the gentle pull of a charm that bound her to his cause. She gathered others like her, the faithful, the broken, the hopeful. Her devotion deepened into doctrine. To Leda, Miquella was the answer to every unanswered prayer. Those who followed Leda into the Shadowland each carried a fragment of Miquella's enchantment, a tether that blurred devotion and desire. Freya, a crimson gladiator of the Redmanes, was one such soul. She had once been stricken by scarlet rot in the swamp of Aeonia, left to die among blossoms of decay. It was Miquella who found her, who knelt beside her and drew the poison from her flesh with his lips. From that moment onward, she belonged to him. The line between eternal gratitude and eternal servitude blurred, and so she followed Leda into the shadow. Dryleaf Dane, the ascetic monk, had been in service to Miquella longer than the rest. A master of unarmed art, his strikes flowed like wind through reeds. His discipline was tempered by the water beating against his body as he watched the Erdtree's leaves fall and its gold fade. In Miquella, Dane saw a final hope, a chance to begin again where faith had turned hollow. Though he chose never to speak, he listened when the charm called his name. Samor, the gentle giant, held a secret beneath his mask. Once a pest, a creature of rot, abandoned by millennia, he and his forager brood wandered faithless until Miquella took them in. They found in him kindness, what their mother had never given. Mor's heart was simple. He followed because he felt loved. Violier, the quiet dreamer, followed at a distance. The eyes of his painted mask were closed, depicting eternal sleep. He had once met someone in his dreams, Saint Trina, the other half of Miquella's soul, and tasted the velvet rest she offered. Since then he had sought that moment insatiably, crafting elixirs just to see her face again. But chasing Trina would defy Miquella, and so Thiolier surrendered instead, giving himself to the peace and comfort of Miquella's charm. And then there was one who longed for blood, the nameless one, the Hornsent. Native to this buried realm, he regarded all newcomers with contempt. To him, the Erdtree was a parasite, a thief that had stolen his crucible-born world. He spat curses at golden grace, hatred sharp in every word. Yet beneath it was grief, deep, pitiful grief. He followed Miquella only for his chance at vengeance, and for a god who would not burn his people. All were charmed, and not a soul among them knew they were captivated. Sir Ansbach, the pureblood knight, was the last member of these followers. Once a devoted servant of Moog, he had sought to free his master from Miquella's enchantment, but in doing so had fallen beneath it himself. When Miquella broke his great rune, the charm was shattered. Now unbound from the false love, Ansbach longed to understand. Why did Miquella walk this path, cradling the corpse of his half-brother? What kind of dream could be born from a husk? Long before these dreams of mercy, before gods spoke of grace or compassion, there were beings who knew no peace, only fire, storm, and the will to survive. The dragons, remember? At the summit of the ancient sky sat Dragon Lord Placidusax, many-headed and unblinking. Among his sworn stood Florisax, the dragon communion priestess, her scales rough as gravel stone, her heart sworn to a single star. Her lord then rose Baal the Dread, black as storm glass and terrible to behold, father of drakes, first of thunder's blood. When Baal rose against the Dragon Lord, the heavens split. He tore through the storm like a blade, and the Dragon Lord met him in kind. Heads were shorn, wings ripped, limbs dashed from sockets, lightning lashed the earth until even the clouds screamed. When it ended, neither had won. Bale fled to the jagged peaks, a wound carved into the horizon, and Placidusax withdrew into the eye of a storm that never ceased turning. All the while, Florisax watched. She sacrificed her dragon form, shed her scales, her wings, her immortal breath, to walk among mortals. She would not rest nor close her eyes until her lord's will was fulfilled. To humankind she offered a terrible gift, dragon communion, a rite of blood, of flesh and devotion. The hunters she chose would slay the drakes, tear their hearts from the burning chests and devour them while they still smoked. Through the chewing and the swallowing and the searing pain, men would taste what it meant to roar like dragons. Altars rose to the sky. More and more took the communion, hunting Bale's kin, hoping that one day they might hunt the dread himself. But as ages passed, thunder dimmed. The priestesses fell silent. Men forgot why they fought, only that the hunger once made them brave, and still Florisax kept her vigil, walking the world without sleep, seeking those whose hearts still burned hot enough to remember. One such soul was Egon. He had been a scavenger once, a crow upon the battlefield, picking buckles and trinkets from the fallen. But through communion he found something like honor. He learned the taste of drake heart, and with every feast his courage grew. He climbed the spire of the jagged peak, chasing the echo of a roar, and there he found despair. Bale met him in a tide of ash and wind. The dread fell upon him like an earthbound star. Egon's mind shattered, his body torn, and when the storm cleared, one of his legs was gone. They say he laughed, then wept, for even broken the thunder still rattled in his bones. Now if you walk the pillar path along the gravesite plain, you may hear him, sobbing, laughing, begging the wind to carry him once more to his nemesis. So tell me, Tarnished, will you fell Bale the Dread, and grant Egon the battle he was born to die for? Will you honor the sleeping priestess who still awaits for her lord's command? Will you strike down every drake and stand before the dragon lord who waits in the storm beyond time? Will you eat every heart and stain every altar? Well, that shall be decided on your journey in time to come. Beneath the earth there once coiled a serpent, vast, ancient, and parted from its light. It was born in the lands between, but banished from grace, and in time it found a new vessel, the womb of a god's child. Within that child it slumbered, whispering, writhing, gnawing, a hunger beneath the skin. Marika, his mother, feared the darkness that hissed behind his eyes, so with trembling hand she reached for it, and in its hollow pressed a golden seal, her scar seal of grace, a charm to bind the serpent, a mother's mercy, yet chains only teach the fire to wait. Messmer grew, magnificent, terrible, his mother's grace in one eye, his father's fury in his hair, but still the serpent twisted within him, whispering to be freed. He was never alone in his torment. The winged serpents watched over him, gentle things of molten glass and sighing wings. They sang when the voices grew too loud. And beside him rode another soul of ruin, Commander Gaius, an Albinuric born without the use of his legs, carried into battle on the tusked back of a great boar. He had once studied the pull of stars beside Messmer's brother, Radahn. Now broken yet unbent, he became Messmer's dearest companion, for both were cursed, and both refused to kneel before fate. Gaius would command his armies, and together they burned in service of a dream their mother had already damned. Femerica, cold in her divinity, turned her gaze away, and left her son to the darkness he had inherited. Messmer withdrew to the Shadow Keep, a fortress of black stone, veined with flame. There the faithful gathered, men, women, and beasts alike, who saw the fire in his eyes and mistook it for divine light. They named him the Impaler and stoked his pyres so they would never fade. Among them were the Black Knights, iron-clad warriors whose armor shimmered like serpent scales. They were led by Commander Andreas and his son Hugh, whose loyalty was as fierce as the fire they served. But faith burns quickly when doubt takes root. When whispers spread that their lord was host to the abyssal serpent itself, the knights wavered. Andreas, heavy with dread, took up his blade in rebellion. Hugh followed, torn between blood and oath. Their defiance was brief. Messmer's flames devoured them both. Yet the Lord of Fire mourned them, entombing father and son beneath his keep, where he is said to kneel still, the serpent silent for once in his grief. Then came the Fire Knights, draped in crimson cloaks, clasped by twin golden serpents, symbols of their bond to the cursed flame. At their head was Cood, once noble of Leendel, who cast aside his title to follow Messmer into exile. His helm bore the wings of a serpent, and his spear blazed. Among his ranks walked Salza, a sage whose swollen head was wrapped in layers of red cloth, a scholar of ruin who despised the Hornsent, and yet burned their lands more brutally than any other. His friend, Fire Knight Hilda, fought not to destroy, but to preserve at times. She hoped to save the specimen storehouse, so it could be studied, even as fire raged all around her. And then there was Wago, the eldest. He hid his sorrow behind 2 death masks, one atop the other. A man so lonely, he tried to raise the dead for company. But the dead he called forth had no laughter, no warmth, no soul, and so Wago's heart froze beside them. The faithful marched still, their faith now hollow. They followed Messmer because to stop was to burn, and perhaps they feared that in his eyes they saw themselves, flickering, trembling, waiting to be consumed. So, Tarnished, if you stand before the Impaler and meet his golden gaze, know that he will tear the seal from his eye and let the serpent loose at last. You will see his limbs unravel, his spine uncoil. The man and the monster will become one. Then the world will know him not as a god nor hero, but what he always was, a forsaken son, born of his mother's sin. And when he falls, his ruin will blaze like dawn, a terrible beauty, for to burn is to be alive. On the far side of the Shadow Altus stands a hall of pale stone and shadowed glass, the Cathedral of Manus Metyr, where Count Ymir waits. By day he sits upon his throne, wrapped in robes of midnight blue, his eyes reflecting constellations unseen by any other. By night he walks a narrow path behind the cathedral, to a crooked tree that leans over a single grave. At its roots rests a stone marked with one name, Yuri. There the Count kneels until dawn, whispering lullabies to the earth, as though that buried child might one day whisper back. Once Ymir was known across the lands as a master of glintstone sorcery, a philosopher whose thoughts were fixed on the night sky. He had served the Carian royals, teaching them how to bend starlight to their will. Among his pupils was R'hllana, the Twin Moon Knight, sister to the Lunar Queen Rennala herself. To his students, Ymir would preach that to gaze upon the stars with love in one's heart is to know them, to adore the dust that falls from them. That is what makes a true sorcerer. But love, he would learn, can lead even the wisest astray. In time, his heart turned from the cold silver of the moons, and his gaze fell instead upon the silence between them. He began to question the two fingers and their divine whispers. What if those voices were not holy, but broken? What if the heavens themselves had fallen mute? His search led him below the cathedral into ruins carved like spiraling fingertips. There, beneath the earth, he studied the gestures etched into the stone and listened to the echo of a forgotten language. It was there he first heard the name Metyr, the mother of fingers. Metyr had once been a radiant star, daughter of the Greater Will, who fell to the lands between and birthed the two fingers. But her body was broken, her ringed finger torn away, her voice silenced forever. In her despair, she began to birth only monsters, crooked, crawling finger creepers that groped through the dark, searching for the divinity that had abandoned her. Yet Ymir did not see a monster. He saw a mother, forsaken by her parent. He built his home and his church above her tomb and named himself her high priest. Each day he sought to restore her glory, concocting a shimmering medicine, a fingerprint nostrum, believing it might one day allow him to stir life within him. His body grew frail, his hands trembled, but he shivered with potential to bring forth life as she once had. The people of Shadow Altus shunned the cathedral, for they whispered that Count Ymir had gone mad. Some say he sits in his study with a small twitching creature in his arms, a tiny finger creeper whom he calls Yuri. But none would prey on the mad count, for he was guarded by shadows, the Swordhands of Night. Two sisters, born in a cold, lightless jail, raised to be silent killers whose eyes had never known the sun. The elder Yolan was steadfast and solemn. She called Ymir her only star, the single point of warmth in a world that had never shown her light. The younger Anna smiled even as she killed, but she was no longer truly here, for her soul had been bound to a puppet's frame, her body moved by unseen threads. Together they guarded their master, but it was Yolan who carried his orders out, and it would be she who faced the truth when it came. For those who descend into the finger-birthing grounds will find a vast, weeping thing of knotted flesh and fingers, its head bearing a whorl of a thumbprint, and from its singular bloodshot eye pours pink light that stains the stone below. If you, tarnished, should defeat Metyr and her children, then Yolan will be waiting, her heart and her blade trembling, for it is then that Ymir will take Metyr's place, his body torn and split, finger-like growths writhing behind his skin, pale, crown askew, surrounded by strange infant creations of only fingers. He shall never be a mother, and in trying to become one, he had lost his son. Yet the echo of his legacy endures, for his pupil R'hllana, the Twin Moon Knight, long ago turned her blade from the moon to fire, serving Messmer the Impaler in her search for justice. Her chamberlain Moonrathil remains behind, a Carian knight in silver armour, standing guard in a castle of ghosts, ever faithful should her ladyship return. And so this land remains, a microcosm of darkness within and without, where all who reach for their light shall find nothing in their palm but the dust of undoing. Before the land was drowned in flame and ruin, a people thrived among spiral towers of root and stone, their horns twisted skyward like branches seeking the sun. Their ivory curves were sacred, life bending back upon life, never ending, never entwined. The Hornsent named themselves the keepers of this realm, custodians of the divine beasts who bore the will of the heavens, lion, bird, and scaled creature alike. For a time their faith and world were one and whole, unbroken and untroubled. Yet their rites to some were troublesome. They believed the body was a vessel to be emptied and refilled, that the unworthy could be carved apart, sealed in clay, and reborn as something purer. The dead and the damned alike were stuffed into jars, their lids sealed with wax. Those who performed this grim work were the potentates, butchers to some, holy priests to others, yet all wielded their gleaming meat knives the same. Their favoured prey were the shaman brethren, for their flesh was the most coveted for melding. But the jars did not always grant salvation to this meat. Some cracked and bled, their contents spilling forth as shapeless things, wailing and raw, flesh congealed and trembling. These were the forfeit. The Hornsent's failed miracles. Others sought divinity through pain. They called them the curse blades, dancers who bled in spirals, whirling their curved blades, slicing themselves in repentance. Among them was Labyrinth, an ascetic who yearned to ascend, but failed. They danced until their feet were bone, their tangled horns slick with blood. A saint of shame. The Hornsent cast them into the cold jail below to rot with their failure. There in that darkness, Labyrinth met Mira, another penitent soul. Together they danced unseen and traced circles in their wake. When Mira's body fell still, Labyrinth was left alone in the darkness, still spinning to this day. You see, the Hornsent revered their divine beasts, regarding them as messengers of the heavens. Foremost among them was the divine beast dancing lion. In festival days they carved statues in its likeness and gathered across the tower settlement to behold its dance. Those chosen to embody it, the sculpted keepers, donned tangled helms of horn and mane to invoke the lion's divine spirit. But when the crusade came, those days of song and celebration were long gone. The lion's dance was harnessed for war. Each step shattered stone, each breath roared with storm and flame. An elder priestess, her eyes hidden beneath a thicket of age-curled horns, alone could call upon the lion to awaken. To those who trespassed upon the city, the lion would rise once more. Her chant could summon its storms, its jaws splitting the air and devouring all who stood before it. And as she murmurs her rites, the grand dame of the Hornsent curses one name above all, Marika. For in their pride the Hornsent built a divine gate, a spire to bridge heaven and earth. When the queen arrived, she ascended through their gate, and in doing so burned the paradise she had promised to bless. Their towers fell, their lands were veiled in shadow, their fields turned to ash. The Hornsent were betrayed, and so they whisper her name with venom, to face her likeness wherever it stands, and curse her for all eternity. Let us now drift into further Hornsent chaos in a thick forest fraught with delirium. The trees of the abyssal wood twist like screaming faces, their roots slick with amber that burns instead of shines. Here, Every sound feels like a thought not your own. Every thought feels borrowed. Every prayer ends in laughter. And at the heart of it all stands Midra's manse, once a house of study, now a tomb for its master. Sage Midra had been a scholar, a mind so brilliant that even his peers feared its reach. He sought truth. He read of the frenzied flame, that chaotic light buried beneath the world, and in it he found the answer no god would give. The flame did not ask for worship, nor distinguish man from beast, beggar from king. It simply consumed, and to Midra that was freedom, the unmaking of cruel hierarchies of grace and will alike. So he opened himself to the roaring laughter below, but when the flame answered, it found his body too frail to bear it, for Midra was already old, wizened, flesh spent. He was not worthy. The manse blackened, charred beams, seared tapestries. Once surrounded by wonderful gardens, it became enveloped with a thick canopy of brambles. The very woods began to rot from within, the air thick with smoky whispers. The Hornsent, horrified by what he had summoned, sealed the abyssal woods and forbade any from entering. A band of inquisitors came to end his heresy. They stormed the manor and struck Midra down with a great thorned weapon that pierced his right eye, driving through his skull and down his spine, pinning him upright to the floor. It did not kill him, but held him in agony and madness. Among the Hornsent emerged one called Jory, an inquisitor of cruel authority. He questioned the sage, pressing barbs and hooks into his flesh, demanding why he had forsaken his kind. But Midra would not answer, for in the next room he could still hear her voice. Nanaya, a lady of fine silk and sharper wit, she did not flee when her husband turned to heresy. She remained. As he screamed, she whispered, "Endure, my love. Endure. You will endure this." Her voice became his anchor, her touch his tether to humanity. Between the Inquisitor's torments, she washed his wounds, cradled his hollowing frame, and soothed him as he wept. Her love alone kept him from surrendering to the madness that begged to be born. The interrogation did not end. Soon Midra's flesh wasted away, his ribs pressed through parchment skin. The Inquisitors forbade meetings with Nanaya. Now, alone, she kept a single keepsake. His severed spine, its tip still glowing faintly with a flickering frenzy. She made out of it a torch, the last warmth he had left her. That flame, too, drove her to anguish. You may find her body still upright in her chair, eyes soft, smile unbroken. And when her breath ceased, so too did Midra's patience. Should you, tarnished one, find your way to that house of ruin, you will see him still, impaled where he fell, yellow robes frayed, face hollow as burnt paper, his eyes two pits of endless fatigue. And if you really intend to push on and test a man who has endured too long, then that barbed spear will be torn free from his skull, his head will become fire, and from it an indistinguishable, weeping laugh. The failed lord of frenzied flame. The flames do not care for love nor grief, they devour all the same. Burn until nothing remains. There is a place in the land of shadow beneath the cerulean coast where the air hums with a violet haze. A garden of impossible stillness, sweet as perfume but heavy with mourning. Flowers that bloom there never lift their heads to the sky. Their petals are cool to the touch, and if you listen closely, you may hear the quiet breath of the garden's grave secret, a saint of slumber. When Miquella wandered the world, seeking a cure for its curses, he carried within him another self, the gentler half of his soul. She was the embodiment of his love, a dream, a reflection. Her form was uncertain. Some saw her as a sleeping child, white hair spilling like silk across her shoulders. Others saw she appeared as a grown woman, radiant, elusive, unbearably serene. But as Miquella neared his purpose, the making of a new age, he knew he could not bring her with him. Atop a mournful cleft that met the sea, he cast away that tender dreaming half, his love, his sleep, his Saint Trina. Down she tumbled into the murky water beneath the world. Her body struck the floor of a deep fissure, her blood spreading like lavender ink. Yet she did not die. Instead, her broken limbs unfurled into violet petals. From them grew a garden of deep purple, a sanctuary where all things rest, and nothing ever wakes. Her blood seeped into the coffins of the coast, where heroes and sinners alike had long ago melted into putrescence. They drank of her nectar and found peace at last. From their remains arose the putrescent night. Mount and rider fused as one to become Trina's guardian. It was a mass of decay, with a cleaver forged from bones and grief. Wherever it passed, a chilling ghost flame bruised the air. Yet even in the waking world, there are still those who seek her mercy. One such quiet soul is the Ollier, who hides behind a mask, carved with a tranquil, sleeping face. By his own admission, he is a weak man, a mere alchemist, a mixer of poisons. But in truth, he is a dreamer. Once, long ago, he met St. Trina in the drifting space between sleep and death. She touched his brow and granted him the velvet calm of perfect rest. When he woke, she was gone, and ever since, he has chased that fleeting peace. Should you find him, he will surely ask for your aid, to craft an elixir to mimic her touch, a somniferous draught said to lull even dragons to sleep. But in his heart, he already knows that only Trina can grant him what he seeks. Yet should you find her, will she speak? Will her perfumed voice still the world around you? And will she tell you the truth of why she was abandoned, and what must be done to Miquella himself? For dreams are fragile things, and even the sweetest ones must end. And so, at last, you, the Tarnished, will uncover the heart of the Land of Shadow, the fabled spiral tower, the city that once pierced the heavens, now veiled in shadow, forgotten by all. Now its blinding grace will stand revealed, its purpose clear, to crown a god. This path is lined with crosses, each marking a step Miquella once took, each representing something he cast aside. His arm, his eye, his fear, his love, his doubt. Miquella was a boy who pitied the broken. Having once watered that sapling with his blood, and from it grew the Halig tree, a haven for the meek, the cursed, the forgotten. Yet though the tree grew tall, it could not endure. Miquella embedded himself within its roots, his sister and blade standing guard as its branches withered. The Halig tree became a hollow promise, and its sanctuary consumed by scarlet bloom, a paradise turned to plague. But before that decay, Miquella had once made a vow. He looked upon Radahn, his half-brother, the general who held the stars in his grasp, and whispered that together they might forge a new age, a world without cruelty, without abandonment, without fear. Radahn smiled at his brother's faith and swore in turn he would be Miquella's consort, his strength to temper compassion and his magic to guide mercy. For a time, peace lingered, But when the shattering came and war tore the lands between, it was not Miquella who met Radahn, but Melania. The siblings fought for days, for nights uncounted, neither yielding. When at last her scarlet bloom unfurled, she leaned close and whispered through the rot, "Miquella awaits thee, O promised consort." The words struck him like lightning, but before Radahn could understand, the red flowers overtook him, his mind sinking into frenzy. Meanwhile, Miquella, half-made god, bound to his tree, felt a hand reach into his slumber. He was stolen. His captor was Mohg, the Lord of Blood, his other half-brother. Mohg bore the sleeping Empyrean to his crimson palace, where rivers ran red and the air was thick with devotion. There he built a shrine of love and sacrifice, drenching Miquella's cocoon in endless offerings, whispering of a dynasty of blood. But Miquella never stirred. No prayer could wake him, for in truth it was Mohg who slept beneath Miquella's spell. The boy god had woven an enchantment upon his captor, turning him into a vessel, a gate through which he might return to his promised consort. Those who loved him followed, drawn by the faintest echo of his charm, you among them, Tarnished. Yet not all who follow reach the same truth. When you ascend the stairs of that unveiled city, you will meet your companions once more. Some will stand beside you, some will doubt you, some will call you unchosen, a servant not of Miquella, but of the Erdtree still, and they will turn their blades against you. You may climb those golden steps alone, your hands stained with the blood of the faithful, as Marika once did, walking toward her own gate of divinity. Beyond the final stair waits Miquella, radiant as dawn, and beside him, Radahn, risen again not in flesh but in soul, his body reforged from the remains of Mohg, eyes burning with lion's fire. Together they stand, mercy and might, promising an age where all suffering shall be erased. But Miquella's mercy, like all gods before him, demands obedience. To defy him is to show him the truest kindness, to free him from the prison of godhood. This too is mercy. Yet do not let that boy's hand touch you, Tarnished. His kindness is a charm, his warmth a spell, and once it finds your heart, you will love him forever. And then, who will save us then? Should you stand before that gate of divinity amid the fallen demigods, the world will begin to fade. No trumpets will sing you triumph, no light will crown your brow, only the slow unravelling of illusion. There will be no age of compassion, no god to love the unloved, only the memory of a dream, and the quiet hope that in some distant dawn, someone might remember these times kindly.